The California sun dipped below the horizon, casting an amber glow over the Broadus family home. Inside, the air was thick with the savory aroma of baked mac and cheese, slow-cooked greens, and fried chicken sizzling in oil. Laughter echoed from the kitchen to the dining room as pots clattered, and voices overlapped in warm chaos. It wasn't every day that the whole Broadus family gathered under one roof. Tonight felt special, almost sacred. Snoop Dogg, or Calvin as he was known to those seated around the table, leaned against the marble kitchen island. His signature braids framed a face that, despite the usual cool demeanor, seemed unusually reflective tonight. He stirred a pot absent-mindedly while watching Shante, his wife of decades, glide through the kitchen with a grace earned from years of holding this family together. "Calvin, stop pretending like you know how to cook," Shante teased, nudging him with her hip as she passed. "Girl, I've been cooking. I've been beats," Snoop shot back with a grin, drawing a round of chuckles from Corday and Cordell, their eldest sons. Corey, their youngest, rolled her eyes. "Same joke for 20 years, Dad." Uncle Rio, ever the family's wild card, popped a grape in his mouth and chimed in. Yeah, beats don't fill stomachs, nephew." The table was set. Dishes of food placed like trophies, each one representing a story, a memory. As everyone found their seats, the conversation bubbled with the kind of warmth only a tight-knit family could create. Jokes flew, memories were retold, and the sound of clinking glasses underscored it all. Yet amid the laughter, there was an undercurrent, something unsaid. Snoop found himself staring longer than usual at the family portraits on the wall. Photos from the early 90s, back when money was tight but love was plentiful. His gaze lingered on one image in particular, a younger version of himself and Shante, arms wrapped around each other, eyes filled with the invincibility of youth. A voice snapped him back. "Dad, you good?" Cordell asked, narrowing his eyes. Yeah, I'm good," Snoop replied, forcing a smile, but his fingers tapped nervously against his glass, betraying his words. As plates were passed and laughter continued, Shante caught the subtle shift. She knew her husband better than anyone. She knew the weight behind that tap against the glass. But she said nothing. Not yet. Uncle Rio leaned over, whispering just loud enough for Snoop to hear. "That look on your face, nephew. You either gotta let it out, or let it eat you alive." Snoop chuckled, brushing it off with a shake of his head. "Ain't nothing, Unc. Just am thinking." But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't true. As the evening wore on, the conversation drifted into nostalgia. They spoke about old tour stories, the struggles of raising kids in the spotlight, and how far they'd all come. Everyone laughed when Uncle Rio recounted the time Snoop tried to teach him how to rap, a memory that still made Corday wheeze with laughter. But every so often, Snoop's eyes would glaze over, his mind slipping away from the present. His hand went back to that glass. Tap, tap, tap. When dessert was served, Shante finally reached over, placing her hand softly over his. "You sure you're okay?" Snoop met her eyes. For a brief moment, the mask slipped. There was fear there, and guilt. But before he could answer, Cordell raised his glass. A toast to family, the realest thing we got. Everyone echoed the sentiment, raising glasses high. Snoop's hand trembled as he lifted his. "Yeah, to family," he said quietly. And in that moment, the weight of the truth he'd carried for years pressed heavier on his chest than ever before. The clinking of glasses faded into the hum of conversation, but something in the air had shifted. Shante's eyes lingered on Snoop, watching the way his smile didn't quite reach his eyes, the way his fingers fidgeted with the rim of his glass, spinning it slowly, as if hoping the motion would drown the weight of what sat inside him. "So, Dad," Cordell said, leaning back in his chair, "remember when you brought Uncle Dre to my school for career day? You had the whole place shut down." Laughter erupted around the table. "Man, them teachers ain't know what to do with themselves," Corday added, shaking his head. Snoop chuckled, but his mind felt miles away. That story, that memory, it was safe. It was the kind of thing that made the family beam with pride. But not everything from the past was like that. As the kids traded stories, Uncle Rio leaned in, resting his elbows on the table. "Y'all remember Tanya?" he asked, a sly grin tugging at his lips. Snoop's head jerked slightly, his smile faltering. "Rio, come on, man. Let's not go there." But it was too late. "Tanya?" Cordell asked, furrowing his brow. "Who's Tanya?" "Nobody," Snoop said quickly, waving it off. "Just somebody from back in the day." Shante's eyes narrowed, lips tightening. She caught the flicker of something, hesitation, maybe even dread, cross Snoop's face. It wasn't just an old friend, it was something else, something bigger. Uncle Rio, sensing the tension, chuckled and leaned back. Just messin'. Forget I said anything. But the seed was planted. The conversation tried to move forward, but the mood had shifted. Cordell glanced at Corrie, who raised her brows in silent question. Corday picked at his food, suddenly less hungry. Snoop's mind raced, his thoughts tangled in a web of memories he'd long tried to bury. Tanya. Just the mention of her name brought back everything. The mistake, the decision to keep it quiet, the guilt that never really left. You thought you could outrun this, a voice in his head whispered, but it always catches up. Shante cleared her throat, her gaze fixed on Snoop. Funny, I don't think I've ever heard of Tanya, she said, her voice deceptively calm. Snoop looked at her, then at the kids, then back down at his plate. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Uncle Rio tried to deflect, clapping his hands. All right, let's not get all serious now. Somebody pass me them yams. But no one laughed, no one moved. A long silence filled the space, thick enough to choke on. Snoop inhaled deeply, fingers gripping the edge of the table. He could feel every eye on him, waiting for him to either dismiss it or confront it. For years he told himself that silence was protection, for his marriage, for his kids, for himself, that some truths were better left unsaid. But now, with Tanya's name out there, the cracks in that silence were spreading fast. Shante leaned back, crossing her arms. Her voice softened, but the edge was sharper than any blade. Calvin, what aren't you telling me? He met her gaze, feeling the familiar tug of war in his chest. Fight or flee? Confess or conceal? His voice barely rose above a whisper. It's complicated. No, she shot back, eyes never leaving his. It's simple. You either say it or you don't. Snoop swallowed hard, his hands trembling beneath the table. For the first time in a long time, the man known to the world for his smooth talk and slick confidence had no words. The silence gripped the room like a storm cloud pressing down, heavy and waiting to burst. Snoop stood slowly, pushing back his chair with a soft scrape against the floor. He reached for his glass but stopped midway, letting his hand fall. I ain't never meant to hurt nobody, he began, his voice low, gravelly with emotion. But there's something I gotta get off my chest. The room went still. Even Uncle Rio said nothing. Snoop took a breath, one that seemed to take everything he had. Years ago, back when things were wild, when I was on the road all the time, there was someone. Just for a moment. A mistake. Corrie blinked, her fork frozen mid-air. Cordell's eyes widened. Shante didn't move, not even a twitch. I kept telling myself it didn't mean nothing, that it was just a one-time thing, something stupid I'd regret forever. I told myself I'd buried it, but last year she reached out. The temperature in the room dropped. Snoop looked down at his hands. She said the kid was mine. A boy. Grown now. Looks just like me. Shante's breath caught, almost inaudible. I didn't believe it at first. I wanted to walk away, but I took the test. He's mine. He looked around the table. I've got a son none of y'all ever knew about, and I've been talking to him for the last few months, trying to figure out what to do. The weight of the confession crushed the room. No one spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of the ceiling fan above. Shante's voice broke through, quiet but clear. You have a son, and you never told me? Snoop nodded slowly. I didn't know how. I didn't want to break what we got. You didn't want to break it? Her tone shifted, disbelief laced with something deeper. Betrayal. You made a choice. You made a mistake. And then you made another. To lie about it. To hide it. Corday pushed his plate away, staring at his father. You always told us to be real. That truth was the foundation of everything. I know, Snoop said, his voice cracking. I know I messed up. Corey wiped her eyes. Do we have a brother out there? And you just thought we'd never need to know? I thought I was protecting y'all, he said. Protecting your mum? I was scared. Shante stood abruptly, her chair scraping hard against the tile. She walked to the far side of the room, staring out the window into the night. Her silhouette was strong, but her shoulders trembled. You were scared, she repeated almost to herself. You let fear make a coward out of you. The words hit harder than a slap. Uncle Rio finally spoke, his tone quiet. You always been a man who faced his demons, nephew. But this one came home. Snoop looked at his wife's back. Shante, I'm sorry. I should have told you the moment I found out. She turned slowly, her eyes burning. You should have told me when it happened. You should have told me before our kids were old enough to understand what betrayal looks like." Her voice didn't rise, but every syllable landed like thunder. The strength in her pain was staggering. "I didn't just marry you, Calvin. I trusted you. With my soul." And with that she left the room, the silence behind her echoing louder than any shout. Snoop sat back down, hollow and shaken. Around him the family sat in stunned silence, a dinner table now split by a truth that could never be unspoken. Shante didn't go far. She stopped just outside the dining room, her hand gripping the edge of the doorway as though it was the only thing holding her up. Her heart pounded so loudly in her chest, it felt like it echoed in the silence behind her. Inside, no one moved. No one knew what to say. After a long moment, she turned and walked slowly back into the room. Her face was composed, but her eyes shimmered with the storm she held inside. "I stood by you," she began, her voice low, almost steady. "When nobody else believed in you, when the world saw you as just another rapper with a gangster image, I saw the man behind it. I gave you everything, Calvin. My time, my body, my loyalty, my soul." Snoop didn't speak. He couldn't. "And you gave me this?" She gestured to the space between them. "A secret son, a woman from the past still close enough to send messages, and silence. That's what you gave me." The children shifted uncomfortably. Cordell looked down, Corey blinked back tears, and Corday clenched his jaw. "I can't believe you thought I couldn't handle the truth," Shante continued, her voice now stronger. "That I wouldn't deserve to know. That I couldn't decide for myself how to process the pain." Snoop leaned forward, elbows on the table, hands clasped. "I was wrong. I know that now." "You were a coward," she corrected. "You say you wanted to protect me, but you were just protecting yourself from facing what you did." The truth, raw and sharp, filled the space. Corey finally spoke, her voice soft. "Mom, what are we supposed to do now?" Shante looked at her daughter, then at her sons. Her gaze softened, though her pain was still etched into every line of her face. "You keep living. You stay grounded. And you remember that love doesn't mean blind forgiveness." Cordell, eyes wide, turned to his father. "Are you going to bring him here? Is he part of this family now?" Snoop swallowed. "I don't know yet. I want him to be, but I didn't want to spring this on y'all like this." "Then why tonight?" Corday asked. "Why now?" Snoop looked at his wife again. "Because it was eating me alive. And I couldn't keep sitting at this table, looking into your faces, pretending everything was perfect." Uncle Rio nodded slowly. "Truth has a way of catching up, whether you're ready or not." Shante crossed her arms, then let them fall. "And now, we're left to figure out what to do with it." She walked towards Snoop, standing across from him. For a long moment, she said nothing. Just looked at the man she had built a life with, raised a family with, weathered storms with. "I don't hate you," she said finally, voice quiet. "But I don't know if I trust you either." That sentence hung in the air like a verdict. "I'm not leaving tonight," she added. "This is my house too, my kids, my story. But you need to understand, everything changes now." Snoop nodded, eyes wet. "I'll do whatever it takes to make this right, even if it takes the rest of my life." Shante held his gaze, then turned to her children. "You have every right to feel whatever you're feeling. We don't need to have answers tonight. We just need to be honest." And in that honesty, something fragile and necessary began to form. Not healing, not yet, but truth. And sometimes that was the only place to start. The morning light filtered through the blinds, casting quiet shadows across the once vibrant dining room. The remnants of the dinner were gone, but the echoes of what was said still hung in the air like smoke after a fire. Snoop sat alone at the table, the same seat he'd taken the night before. He hadn't slept. His thoughts had spiraled all night. Memories, regrets, fears. But above all, he thought of Shante. The way she looked at him. The way her pain stayed silent, yet screamed louder than words. He heard soft footsteps and looked up to see her walking in, wrapped in a house robe. No makeup, no armor, just Shante, the woman who had stood beside him through decades of storms. She sat across from him without speaking. After a long silence, Snoop said, "Thank you for staying." Shante exhaled, rubbing her hands together. "I didn't stay for you. I know. I stayed for me, for our kids, for clarity." He nodded slowly. "Whatever you need, however long, I'll wait. I won't run from this." She studied him. "Do you love him? Your son?" Snoop blinked. "I don't know him yet, but I want to. I feel responsible. I feel like I owe him something, at least the truth." Shante looked away, her voice heavy. "And what about me? What do you owe me?" "Everything," he said without hesitation. The words settled between them like bricks laid for a foundation. Honest, weighty, permanent. She didn't respond right away. "I need time, Calvin. This ain't something that gets fixed with a song or a speech. I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said. "I'm asking for a chance to earn it." Their eyes met. She searched his face, perhaps looking for the boy she once knew, or the man he became. Maybe both. "I'll give you that," she said finally. "A chance, but don't mistake that for forgetting. This family might bend, but we don't break unless we're forced." In the hallway, footsteps sounded. Corey peeked in, followed by Cordell and Corday. The atmosphere was still fragile, but lighter than the night before. Corey spoke first. "So, are we talking to him? The other son?" Snoop looked at Shante, who gave a subtle nod. "If you want to," Snoop said. "I won't force it. But I'd like to introduce you when the time feels right." Corday rubbed the back of his neck. "Feels weird, but I'd rather meet him than wonder forever." Cordell added, "If he's part of you, he's part of us. But that don't mean it's all good right away." Shante stood and walked over to the kids, wrapping her arms around them. "We're going to take this one step at a time. Together." Uncle Rio wandered in with a cup of coffee, grinning. "Well, y'all still here, that's a good sign." Snoop chuckled, shaking his head. "Yeah, Unc, still here." Rio raised his cup. "To the truth. Painful as it is, it keeps us real." Later that afternoon, the family sat together in the living room. They didn't have all the answers, they didn't need to. What mattered was that they weren't hiding anymore. Snoop pulled his phone from his pocket. On the screen was a photo. A young man, early 20s, brown eyes, eerily familiar. He stared at it a moment, then looked up at his family. "You ready?" he asked. Shante took his hand. "As we'll ever be." If this story moved you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and stay with us for more powerful family moments and real-life truths. And don't miss the next one. Click the video on screen now to keep watching.